We've been waiting to find out what is Facebook going to do about Donald Trump. We knew that some sort of decision was coming about his future on the platform. Well, now it is here. Facebook said that they plan to suspend him for 2 years following his comments inciting violence in the wake of the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. And when those 2 years are up, does that mean that he'll be able to come back on? Well, the Facebook Vice President of Global Affairs, Nick Clegg, says, if we determine that there is still a serious risk to public safety, we will extend the restriction for a set period of time and continue to reevaluate until that risk has receded. So that is sufficiently vague that we have no idea. We do know one thing though, 2 years being suspended means that, oh, what do you know? If he decides to run for president again, which he says he will be back on Facebook during that. Although I'm sure you both will agree that that is just a weird coincidence.
Oh my gosh. Well, here, let me give us a generous read to start. I think that Facebook needed to come up with something concrete or more concrete than the indefinite ban that was issued initially after January 6th. And so I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they have a set amount of time now where he is banned. And I'm glad that they're working on some sort of system where they can ban world leaders for inciting violence. I think that's overall a good thing. I think there are ways that it could probably improve. And I dread the day that he comes back. Facebook changes so quickly, I have no idea what it's gonna be like in 2 years. Like 2 years ago, it was something totally different than it is now, et cetera. I just hope that he does something dumb on his first day back and then we get a blissful extension of the vacation from him.
Agreed. I'm thinking that this is a stress test of how much America is going to put up with petulant, rich, white men. Because that's what this is. We really are seeing, Facebook is having to create all these brand new rules for Donald Trump. He's rich, he's conservative, he's white. So we have to give so much deference to them because if anybody had done anything remotely close to what Donald Trump did, which was inciting sedition, right? An insurrection, we'd be in jail. But here, the real question is not whether or not Donald Trump is gonna be in jail, it's whether or not Facebook is going to hold him accountable. Oh, how much we put up with conservative, rich, white men's anger. Brett Kavanaugh.
Well, look, we're going to return to him in a sec. Beyond him, we did learn a little bit about their policies towards politicians, at least in theory. The company says that it's no longer going to automatically give politicians a pass when they break the company's hate speech rules. Madness that they ever did, but they did. That supposedly is now at an end. And Facebook's new policy refers specifically to the behavior of public officials during periods of heightened violence or unrest. Which again, maybe that sounds specific, but it reeks of we can do whatever we want. We're gonna lick our thumb and stick it in the air and see which way the wind is blowing. And if it seems like he's so unpopular and people are so bothered by him, then maybe we'll briefly get rid of him. Otherwise, we'll let him back on. And it's 2 years. We don't know what the country's gonna look like in 2 years, but I know what's happened in the last 2 years and extrapolating forward in time, I don't know that any of us are crazy enough to come up with what millions and millions of Americans will believe about this country, about democracy, about the election, about anything. They are going to be like, we're gonna look back and think, why can't they just be QAnoners anymore? And so will there be violence? Will there be unrest? Why wouldn't there be? Like Donald Trump is going to mature between now and then, and he's gonna run based off of the Republican alternative to Biden's still like swamped infrastructure bill. I think there's probably gonna be some unrest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think here's something though. If you take a look at Donald Trump's blog that lasted, I believe, 29 days, it really was a testament to how little he was willing to work on creating his own platform or making his own brand within cyberspace without the aid of these giant social media companies. And I think Donald Trump being on Twitter and being on Facebook contributed to the environment that led to the catastrophic changes of the last 2 years. So I think simply having him off Facebook will be a good move, I think. But again, we can't really extrapolate forward because who knows what fresh hell awaits us. I also think that this rule and how hard Donald Trump is fighting for his right to post which isn't a constitutional right, but whatever. It's sort of a testament to how social media manipulates our like reward centers. Like he is acting like one of those rats in that experiment that kept hitting the cocaine button and eventually starved to death because they didn't want to eat any food. Like there is an addictive relationship that some people have with social media that is like causing like this deep cultural sickness that I don't think we have time to really get into right now. But I'm glad that he's off for now. I'm just going to cherish these days for the next 2 years.
It's that positive reaffirmation, right? No matter what you do, so long as you're rewarded for it, you'll keep getting clicks and you'll keep riding that algorithm to a nice paycheck. Donald Trump knows that, but Facebook and Twitter, they know that also, right? And they're on the opposite side of the equation, getting the benefit of all the profit they make off of Donald Trump. And so they're setting this up for the perfect return of the villain. The villain in this narrative will be back in 2 years.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing. And they're gonna cash in on it because we built an entire system off of greed. And it goes right back to what you're saying, Aaron. It goes right back to the fact that the reward centers in our brains are triggered to respond to negative actions because that's what the algorithm rewards. And that's exactly what Twitter and YouTube are gonna reward when the villain returns in 2 years.
Wait a second, but I think you may have just stumbled on something. When you said profit, they may not have realized this, but the 2 years means he'll be back on Facebook for the election. They're gonna start to make money off of his ads again. Oh my God, they should have factored that potential biasing influence into their decision. But yeah. Okay, well look, it's only fair for us to let him respond, although not on Facebook. Notably, not even on his blog anymore, you pathetic little weenie. You couldn't go 1 month anyway. Donald Trump greeted the news that he would be suspended for the next 2 years on Facebook by saying it's an insult to the record-setting 75 million people, plus many others who voted for us, misstating the number of, so wait, hold on, okay. So the 75 million is a misstatement. And then he said, and the many others. Why aren't they in that number then? We know what he means though, that the whole thing's fake and made up, but
entities like ghosts, I don't know. What does he mean by that?
I don't know. He goes on to say though, and this is, look, Donald Trump has had a couple of different forms of fairly direct communication with the American people, and no matter what format it comes in, it's gonna come off seeming clownish. But when you put one of his statements on letterhead saying statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th president of the United States of America, it's even funnier when he then writes, next time I'm in the White House, there will be no more dinners at his request with Mark Zuckerberg and his wife. It will be all business. You put that on letterhead? You could put that on a Post-it note.
Nobody wants to go to the White House and eat a pile of Big Macs with you, dude. Like,
well, Aaron, Zuckerberg did have a private meeting with him that he initially didn't disclose.
That's just like Mitt Romney.
True.
Yeah. So they're all willing to go kiss the ring of Donald Trump so long as he can deliver what they want, and he's letting Mark Zuckerberg alone. Like, listen, the last time we talked, it was all fun and games, but the next time it's going to be all business. But that's all Mark Zuckerberg cares about in the first place. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't like you, Donald Trump. He just likes the fact that you have an ideology that he can continue to profit off of.
Yeah. Really fast reactions though. He's not, I thought he might get back onto Facebook. And honestly, by the way, they said they're banning him for 2 years. That does not mean he's banned for 2 years. They could change their mind in a year. But he's not on Twitter, he's not on Facebook, he's not on Twitch. I don't think he's really on YouTube either. How much does this decision actually hurt his efforts to maintain control of the Republican Party, to potentially run for president again? We know that he's gonna start doing rallies again in just a couple of weeks. Is that going to fill the void, or does this actually hurt him?
You know, here's something that's kind of been puzzling me for the last few weeks. Knowing what we know about how few people were actually reading his blog and how few people were interacting with his blog on social media, and how social media platforms were still gaining members despite millions of people threatening to leave over Donald Trump's ban. Facebook is still growing. Twitter is still growing, and that is despite all those threats that we can now assume were empty. So people weren't engaging with Donald Trump's content online. He's no longer the president, so everything he says is no longer a headline. I'm curious as to why Republicans still feel beholden to him. Before, I thought they're afraid of his followers. They're a bunch of fraidy cats who can't deal with, getting mean tweets on social media. But now I don't quite understand. It feels like there's a disconnect between why they're afraid of him. Right now, the Trump Organization, there's a grand jury that's been convened in New York, and criminal charges are likely to follow facing somebody in the Trump Organization. I don't see where his power is coming from. He's not as rich as Mark Zuckerberg by a long shot. He doesn't have the platform of Mark Zuckerberg. He keeps threatening to start his own social media platform. I don't see where the actual power is coming from. People are afraid of him, but why?
Yeah.
Donald Trump is just an influencer who became president. Because as soon as the social media platform shut him down, that was it. But you got people like Lindsey Graham and Kevin McCarthy and the rest of the Get Along gang who've never seen those kind of numbers on likes and retweets. And they're like, oh my God, Donald Trump gets 100,000 retweets? We gotta make this dude president. And I'm like, but the reality of it is like they are the real question. Like if I could just jump up to a 30,000 foot level, is how much power these social media platforms have to dictate like who really has control in this country, because they gave the specter of Donald Trump with all the likes and retweets and shares. But at the end of the day, as soon as they cut the algorithm off from being in his favor, he was just as uninfluential as the rest of us.
Yeah. It is.
So is Mar-a-Lago a hype house in that?
The energy seems a bit low for a hype house, but it is weird to think that like, if you're just popular, you could either end up hawking flat tummy tea or become president. One of those two things. So the two paths open to you.
That's right.
He got the worst of the two.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.